I need you to understand something before I tell you the rest. For 18 months, I didn't exist. Not officially. Not legally. Not in any system that mattered. My credit cards stopped working. My bank accounts vanished. My social security number led nowhere. And the woman who did this to me? She smiled at me every morning over coffee and told me she loved me. My name is Rachel Winters, and I'm about to tell you how my business partner systematically erased me from existence, took everything I had built, and almost succeeded in making me believe I had never existed at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, back when I still thought loyalty meant something. I met Sophia Chen in graduate school at MIT, back when we were both 24 years old and convinced we were going to change the world. She was studying computer science with a focus on machine learning. I was getting my MBA with a concentration in venture capital and startup strategy. We met at a hackathon, one of those exhausting 48-hour marathons where sleep-deprived students survive on energy drinks and the delusion that their half-baked ideas might actually matter. Sophia's idea did matter, though. She had developed an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior patterns with uncanny accuracy, something that went far beyond the standard data analytics tools available at the time. The way she explained it, her system didn't just track what people bought or clicked on, it analyzed the psychological patterns behind decision-making and could predict what someone would want before they knew they wanted it themselves. I saw the potential immediately. Not just the technology itself, but what we could build around it. We stayed up all night in that conference room, mapping out a business plan on whiteboards, our excitement building with each passing hour. By sunrise, we had the skeleton of what would become Meridian Analytics. The company we built together over the next 7 years was everything we had dreamed of and more. We secured seed funding within 6 months of graduating. Series A came 2 years later. By year 5, we had contracts with major retailers, pharmaceutical companies, and political campaigns. Our algorithm had evolved into something extraordinary, a predictive system so sophisticated that our clients called it almost supernatural in its accuracy. But here's what I didn't understand then, what I couldn't have possibly understood. Sophia wasn't just building an algorithm to predict consumer behavior. She was studying me. Learning my patterns. Understanding my weaknesses. Preparing for the day when she would deploy everything she had learned to erase me completely. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was at my desk in our downtown Boston office, the one with the view of the harbor that I had spent 3 years earning. My coffee was still hot, my inbox was manageable, and I was feeling good about a pitch meeting we had scheduled for later that week with a Fortune 500 company that could triple our revenue. I tried to log into our company's financial management system to review some projections. My password didn't work. I tried again, thinking I had mistyped. Nothing. I reset it using the security questions I had set up myself. The system told me my answers were incorrect. A small flutter of unease moved through my chest, but I pushed it down. Technical glitches happened. I called our IT director, Marcus, someone I had personally hired 2 years earlier. Marcus, I'm locked out of the financial system, I said when he picked up. Can you reset my access? There was a pause on the other end of the line, just a fraction too long to be comfortable. Rachel, he said slowly, and I could hear him typing in the background. I'm not showing you in the system at all. Are you sure you're using the right credentials? Of course I'm sure, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I set them up myself 3 years ago. Just reset it manually. More typing. Another pause. I'll need to get approval from Sophia for admin-level access changes, he said finally. New policy. I'll have her call you. I hung up, irritation prickling at the back of my neck. New policy? Sophia and I made policy decisions together. We had always made them together. That was the foundation of our partnership, equal voices, equal power, equal stake in everything we built. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. In back-to-back meetings all morning. Can whatever it is wait until lunch? I stared at the message, at the casual dismissal of what should have been a priority. But I typed back, sure. See you at noon. By the time noon arrived, I had discovered 3 more access problems. My corporate credit card was declined when I tried to expense a client lunch. My remote access to our code repository was blocked. And when I tried to pull up our client contracts in the shared drive, I got an error message saying I didn't have permission to view the files. Sophia walked into my office at 12:15, carrying 2 salads from the place across the street that we always went to, the one where they knew both our orders by heart. She was smiling, that warm, familiar smile that had seen us through countless late nights and impossible deadlines. "Sorry I'm late," she said, setting one of the salads on my desk. "The call with the investors ran over. You know how they are." "What investors?" I asked. "We don't have any investor calls scheduled this week." Something flickered across her face, too quick for me to identify. "Just some exploratory conversations," she said lightly. "Nothing concrete yet. Didn't want to bother you with it until there was something real to discuss." "What's going on with the system access?" I explained the problems I had been having all morning, watching her face carefully as I spoke. She frowned, nodded in the right places, made sympathetic noises. Every reaction looked genuine. "That's so weird," she said when I finished. "Let me talk to Marcus this afternoon. Probably just some glitch with the latest security update. You know how paranoid the compliance team has been since that data breach at Comtech last quarter." I wanted to believe her. I chose to believe her. Because the alternative, that something was fundamentally wrong, was too enormous to contemplate. "There's something else," I said. "My corporate card was declined this morning." Sophia's expression shifted to concern. "Declined? That doesn't make sense." "Let me check with accounting. Probably just hit the spending limit and needs a refresh. I'll get it sorted out today." She left my office 20 minutes later, taking her half-eaten salad with her and leaving behind reassurances that everything would be fixed by end of day. I watched her walk back to her office through the glass walls that separated our spaces, watched her settle back at her desk and immediately pick up her phone. By 5 o'clock that evening, nothing had been fixed. By the end of the week, things had gotten worse. My email access became intermittent. Messages I sent didn't always arrive at their destinations. Replies I was copied on mysteriously never reached my inbox. Calendar invitations for important meetings somehow failed to sync to my schedule. I showed up for a client call only to discover it had been rescheduled 2 days earlier, a change I never received notification about. Sophia was apologetic every time. Sympathetic. Helpful. She forwarded me the messages I hadn't received. She caught me up on meetings I had missed. She assured me that Marcus was working on the technical issues and that everything would be resolved soon. But I was starting to notice other things. Small changes that individually meant nothing but together formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. People stopped asking for my approval on decisions. Emails that used to be addressed to both of us now went only to Sophia. Clients who had always worked primarily with me started directing their questions to her instead. In meetings, people turned to her first, looked to her for guidance, deferred to her judgment in ways they never had before. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was reading too much into normal shifts in office dynamics. But paranoia, I was learning, is just pattern recognition before you have enough data to prove you're right. The moment I knew something was truly, deeply wrong came 6 weeks after that first morning when my password stopped working. I came into the office early, before sunrise, to catch up on work I had fallen behind on due to all the technical issues. When I tried to badge into the building, my keycard didn't work. I stood there in the cold March pre-dawn, swiping my card again and again at the reader that had recognized it every morning for 7 years, watching the red light blink at me in denial. Finally, I called the overnight security guard, someone I had chatted with hundreds of times during late work nights. "Ms. Winters," he said when he opened the door, and there was something in his voice that made my stomach drop. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I work here, James," I said, forcing a smile. "Just got locked out. My card seems to be demagnetized or something." He hesitated, looking uncomfortable. I'll need to call Ms. Chan to approve visitor access. Visitor access? The words came out sharper than I intended. James, I'm not a visitor. I'm a founder. I own half of this company. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, and he genuinely looked sorry. New protocols. I just follow the procedures I'm given. He let me wait in the lobby while he called Sophia. I sat on the modern leather couch we had picked out together 3 years ago, looking at the company logo etched into the glass wall, the logo I had spent weeks designing, and felt the first real spike of fear penetrate through my confusion. Sophia arrived 40 minutes later, her hair still wet from the shower, concern etched across her face. She hugged me in the lobby, and I felt myself tense in her embrace. Rachel, what's going on? She asked. James said there was a problem with your badge? My badge doesn't work, I said flatly. Just like my passwords don't work and my email doesn't work and my corporate card doesn't work. Sophia, what the hell is happening? She guided me to a conference room, closed the door, sat down across from me with that expression of sympathy that I was starting to hate. I didn't want to worry you, she began, and those 6 words sent ice through my veins. But we've been having some serious security concerns. Someone's been trying to access our systems from outside IPs. Marcus thinks we might have been compromised. He's been tightening security across the board. And my badge just happened to get caught up in that? Everything got reset as a precaution, she said. I can get you new credentials today. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I should have told you what was happening. I wanted to believe her. Every instinct I had been honing over 15 years of friendship and partnership screamed at me to trust this person I had built everything with. But there was something in her eyes, something that didn't quite match the concern in her voice. Show me the security reports, I said. What? The reports about the security breach. Show them to me. She blinked. They're technical. Marcus has them. I don't understand most of it myself. Then let's go talk to Marcus together. A muscle in her jaw tightened, so briefly I almost missed it. He's not in yet. It's barely 6:30. Rachel, you're exhausted. I can see it. You've been running yourself into the ground lately. Why don't you take the day off, let me handle getting your access sorted out, and we can regroup tomorrow? I stood up. I'm not taking the day off. This is my company, Sophia. Half of it is mine. I built this with you. I'm not going anywhere until I understand what's happening. She stood too, and for just a moment, something crossed her face that I had never seen before. Something cold. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. But then it was gone, replaced by warm concern again, and I wondered if I had imagined it. Of course, she said softly. Of course you're not going anywhere. I'll get Marcus on the phone right now. We'll get this straightened out. It took me 3 more weeks to realize the truth. 3 weeks of watching my access to our company systematically disappear. 3 weeks of increasingly hollow reassurances from Sophia that everything was being fixed. 3 weeks of slowly understanding that I wasn't being locked out due to security concerns or technical glitches. I was being erased. The revelation came when I hired my own IT consultant, someone outside our company who Sophia didn't know about. His name was David Park, and he came highly recommended by a friend in the venture capital world. I met him at a coffee shop far from our office, paid him in cash, and asked him to tell me what was really happening to my digital identity. It took him 2 days to confirm what I had started to suspect. Every access point I had been locked out of had been deliberately, methodically removed. My user permissions hadn't failed, they had been deleted and reassigned. My passwords hadn't stopped working, they had been changed by someone with administrative access. My email wasn't malfunctioning, messages sent to me were being automatically forwarded to another account before they could reach my inbox. Someone with deep system access had been carefully, surgically removing me from every digital system that connected me to the company I had co-founded. Who has this kind of access? I asked David, even though I already knew the answer. According to the logs I was able to pull, he said, sliding a folder across the coffee shop table, every single change originated from an admin account registered to Sophia Chin. I sat there in that coffee shop, looking at pages of technical documentation that spelled out my erasure and timestamps and system commands, and felt something fundamental break apart inside me. Not my heart. Not my trust. Something deeper. The basic assumption that the world operated according to rules I understood. There's more, David said quietly. The financial systems. Someone's been moving money. A lot of money. Out of operating accounts and into accounts I can't trace. How much money? Over the past 6 months? Close to $3 million. The number was too large to process. $3 million. Our operating capital. Our reserve funds. Money that should have required both of our signatures to move. How is that possible? I whispered. I never authorized any transfers. I would have noticed. Someone forged digital signatures, David said. Really sophisticated forgeries. Good enough to fool the bank's verification systems? If you want to prove this was fraud, you're going to need more than just my analysis. You're going to need a lawyer. A good one. I hired a lawyer that afternoon. His name was Robert Martinez, and he specialized in corporate fraud. I sat in his downtown office with its view of Boston Harbor, the same view I had from my own office that I was apparently no longer welcome in, and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression growing grimmer with each detail I shared. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me with something like pity. Ms. Winters, he said carefully, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Do you have documentation proving your ownership stake in Meridian Analytics? Of course, I said. We filed all the incorporation papers together. I have copies of everything. And where are those copies? I froze. In the company's legal files. In our shared drive. The shared drive you no longer have access to? The realization hit me like cold water. I have copies at home, I said, but even as I said it, I was trying to remember the last time I had actually seen those documents. We had digitized everything years ago. The physical copies had been in storage somewhere, or maybe thrown out during one of our office moves. Find them, Martinez said. Find every piece of physical documentation you can that proves your ownership, your involvement, your stake in this company. Employment contracts, bank statements, tax returns, anything. Because if what you're telling me is true, Ms. Chen isn't just trying to push you out of the company. She's trying to erase the evidence that you were ever there at all. I went home that night to the apartment I had lived in for 5 years, the expensive 2-bedroom in Back Bay that I had bought when Meridian started making real money, and began searching for proof that I existed. It was harder than I expected. 7 years of building a company in the digital age meant that most of our critical documents existed only as files on servers I no longer had access to. The few physical copies I had kept were scattered through years of filing systems that I had reorganized multiple times. I found my original employment contract from when we incorporated, wrinkled and coffee-stained but still legible. I found bank statements showing deposits from Meridian's payroll account. I found tax returns listing me as a company officer. Piece by piece, document by document, I built a small pile of evidence that Rachel Winters had once been real, had once mattered, had once owned half of something valuable. But as I dug deeper, I started noticing gaps. Inconsistencies. Things that should have been in my files but weren't. The original incorporation documents that should have listed me as a 50% owner? Missing. The shareholders' agreement we had signed? Gone. The documents I did find were important, but they weren't quite enough to prove what I needed to prove. I called Martinez the next morning. I found some documents, I told him. But not everything. The incorporation papers are missing. The shareholders' agreement is gone. Were they in your possession? He asked. They were in our shared files. Both physical and digital. And now they're not there anymore. He was quiet for a moment. Ms. Winters, I'm going to ask you to consider something. Is it possible that you're misremembering the ownership structure? That your role in the company was different from what you believe it to be? The question hit me like a slap. What are you asking me? I'm asking if there's any possibility that you've misunderstood your position. That maybe the stress of recent months has caused some confusion about. I did not misunderstand anything, I said, my voice cold. I co-founded this company. I built it with Sophia. I own half of it. I know what I am and what I did. Then we need to prove it, he said simply. Because right now, from a legal standpoint, you're a former employee who's locked out of company systems. That's all the documentation shows. A former employee with some access issues and some very serious accusations against a highly successful tech CEO. Former employee? I repeated. I haven't quit. I haven't been fired. According to the company's HR records, you resigned 6 weeks ago. There's a resignation letter with your digital signature, submitted voluntarily with 2 weeks' notice. You've been on garden leave since then, and your official separation date is tomorrow. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. That's impossible. I never resigned. I would never. Someone forged your signature, Martinez said. Just like they forged it on the financial transfers. Ms. Winters, you need to understand what you're up against here. This isn't just corporate politics or a partnership dispute. This is a sophisticated, coordinated effort to remove you from your own company and cover all the tracks. Whoever is doing this has been planning it for a long time. I sat down on my couch, my phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what he was telling me. Sophia had been planning this. For months, maybe longer. Every reassurance, every apology, every promise that things would be fixed, it had all been theater. A performance designed to keep me calm while she finished erasing me. What do I do? I asked. We file an emergency injunction to freeze the company's assets and prevent any further changes. We demand access to all corporate records. We make this public and messy and difficult for Ms. Chain to continue. But Ms. Winters, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. And there's a good chance that by the time we're done, there won't be much of Meridian Analytics left to fight over. I wish I could tell you that the legal battle was quick and decisive. That justice prevailed and truth won out. But that's not how the world works. The world works according to systems, and Sophia had spent months making sure all the systems said she was right and I was delusional. The injunction was denied. The judge said I hadn't provided sufficient evidence of fraud. My lawyer filed appeals, demanded discovery, fought for every document and deposition. Sophia's legal team, paid for with company money that was partially mine, buried us in paperwork and procedural delays. Meanwhile, my life continued to fall apart in ways that were too systematic to be coincidental. My personal bank account was frozen due to suspected fraud I had absolutely not committed. My credit cards were maxed out with charges I didn't make, charges for expensive electronics and luxury goods sent to addresses I had never heard of. My credit score plummeted as missed payments for loans I never took out piled up on my record. Someone was using my identity to commit crimes, and every time I tried to prove I was innocent, I ran into the same problem. The documentation systems all said Rachel Winters had done these things. The digital evidence was perfect. The paper trail was flawless. I tried to close my accounts, to lock down my identity, but that required proving I was who I said I was. And proving I was Rachel Winters required documentation from systems that now said Rachel Winters either didn't exist or had signed away all her rights. It was elegant, in a horrible way. Sophia hadn't just erased me from Meridian Analytics. She had used her algorithm, the one we had built together to predict consumer behavior, to systematically dismantle my entire life. She had analyzed my patterns, predicted my responses, and engineered a perfect trap that tightened around me with each move I made. I tried to contact our former clients, to tell them what had happened, to warn them they were working with someone who was actively committing fraud. But somehow, my emails never reached them. My phone calls went unreturned. And when I finally managed to show up in person at one company's office, their security escorted me out with a story about a restraining order I knew nothing about. By month 4, I was living off my savings, which were rapidly dwindling as legal fees piled up. By month 6, I had moved out of my Back Bay apartment and into a studio in Somerville, giving up my car and most of my possessions. By month 8, I had sold everything of value I owned just to keep fighting the legal battle that was costing me everything. I kept thinking about something David Park had said when he showed me the evidence of what Sophia had done. This is the most comprehensive identity theft I've ever seen. She didn't just steal your money or your company. She stole your existence. And she had. Every digital system that defined me in the modern world now said I was someone else. Someone unstable. Someone dishonest. Someone who didn't deserve to be believed. The lowest point came on a Thursday morning in November, 14 months after this had all started. I was at the public library, using their computers because I could no longer afford internet service, trying to find some documentation, any documentation, that could help my case. A librarian approached me, a young woman I had chatted with before, and asked if I was Rachel Winters. Yes, I said, grateful for someone who still recognized me. I'm sorry, she said, looking genuinely apologetic. But I need to ask you to leave. We've received a complaint that you've been harassing our staff and using our computers to commit fraud. I stared at her. That's not true. I've never harassed anyone. I've just been doing research. I believe you, she said quietly. But there's a letter here from your company's legal team with documentation about a restraining order. They say you're mentally unstable and you've been stalking your former business partner. If you don't leave voluntarily, I have to call the police. I left. I walked out into the cold November afternoon and realized I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go home because my landlord was evicting me for unpaid rent I couldn't pay because my accounts were frozen. I couldn't go to friends because most of them worked in tech circles that believed Sophia's version of events. I couldn't go to my family because I had been too proud to tell them how bad things had gotten. I stood on that sidewalk and felt the full weight of what Sophia had done. She hadn't just stolen my company. She had stolen my identity, my reputation, my ability to exist in the systems that modern life requires. She had turned me into a ghost. And then something shifted inside me. Standing there with nothing left to lose, I finally understood what I needed to do. I had been fighting this battle on Sophia's terms, using her systems, following her rules. I had been trying to prove I was right within structures she controlled. It was time to build a new structure. The plan took 3 months to put into place. 3 months of patience and precision and careful planning that would have made Sophia proud, if she had known about it. But that was the key, she couldn't know. Not until it was too late. I started by disappearing. I let my lawyer know I was dropping the case, let my few remaining contacts think I had given up and left Boston. I moved to Providence, Rhode Island, just far enough away to be invisible but close enough to maintain access to what I needed. I took a job as a waitress, paying cash for a room in someone's house, living off the grid as much as possible. And I started building my own algorithm. See, Sophia had taught me something during our years of partnership. She had taught me that data was power. That understanding patterns was control. That if you could predict behavior, you could shape reality. She had used those lessons to destroy me. Now I was going to use them to destroy her. I spent my days waiting tables and my nights at the Providence Public Library, using their computers to reconstruct everything I could about Meridian Analytics. I scraped data from public sources. I tracked social media posts from employees. I monitored press releases and filing documents and every digital breadcrumb Sophia left behind as she grew our company into the success we had always dreamed it would be. And slowly, carefully, I found the pattern. The flaw in her perfect crime. Sophia's algorithm, the one that had made Meridian Analytics so successful, was still running on the infrastructure we had built together. The same infrastructure I had helped design. She had locked me out of the front door, but I knew the building's architecture intimately. I knew where the back doors were. More importantly, I knew how to create new ones. I built my own version of her algorithm, trained on all the data I could gather about her behavior over the years I had known her. Every email she had sent, every decision she had made, every pattern I had observed. I fed it all into my system and asked it one simple question. What is Sophia Chen afraid of? The answer came back in patterns. In behaviors she had exhibited throughout our partnership that I had never quite understood. In the way she controlled information flow. In the decisions she made about who had access to what. In the sophisticated structure she had built to erase me. Sophia Chen was afraid that someone would figure out that her algorithm, the foundation of all of Meridian's success, didn't work the way she claimed it did. It took me another month to prove it. Another month of careful analysis, of testing the predictions her system made against actual outcomes, of tracking the subtle ways she manipulated results to make the algorithm appear more accurate than it actually was. Meridian's algorithm wasn't magic. It wasn't even particularly special. What made it special was Sophia's genius for presentation, for cherry-picking successes and hiding failures, for managing client expectations in ways that made normal predictive analytics look like supernatural foresight. She had built a house of cards. And she had been so afraid I would discover that truth that she had committed massive fraud to keep me away from the data. I had my revenge. But I needed to deliver it in a way that would actually work, in a way that wouldn't just be dismissed as the rantings of a discredited former employee. That's when I thought of James Chen, Sophia's older brother. James was a journalist, specializing in technology investigations. We had met at family dinners during the years when Sophia and I were close, back when I still thought of her brother as a friend. I sent him an encrypted email from an anonymous account. No accusations. No emotional appeals. Just data. Cold, hard data showing the discrepancies between Meridian's claimed accuracy rates and their actual performance. Documentation of the financial fraud. Evidence of the systematic identity theft that had been committed using the company's own systems. I gave him everything I had spent months building, and I gave him one more thing. A testable prediction. Using my reconstruction of Sophia's behavior patterns, I predicted exactly what she would do when a specific client asked for a specific type of analysis. I gave James the dates, the details, the expected outcome. And I told him that when Meridian's algorithm failed to predict what actually happened, he would have his proof that something was fundamentally wrong. 3 weeks later, he published his investigation. The Emperor's New Algorithm: How Meridian Analytics Built an Empire on Smoke and Mirrors. The article went viral within hours. Financial regulators launched investigations within days. Clients pulled their contracts within weeks. And Sophia Chen, brilliant Sophia who had thought she could erase me without consequences, found herself facing federal fraud charges. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had used systems to destroy me. I had used systems to destroy her. But I made sure there was one difference. When I brought her down, I didn't erase her. I didn't manipulate records or forge signatures or gaslight her into thinking she was crazy. I simply told the truth, supported by data she couldn't refute, and let the world draw its own conclusions. The legal aftermath took 2 years to fully resolve. Sophia pled guilty to fraud and identity theft. She served 18 months in federal prison. Meridian Analytics was dissolved, its assets sold off to pay back defrauded clients and settle lawsuits. My lawsuit, the one I had thought I lost, was suddenly very winnable. With Sophia's fraud exposed, my ownership stake was finally recognized. I received a settlement that, while nowhere near what the company should have been worth, at least gave me enough to start rebuilding my life. But rebuilding turned out to be complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. The people who had believed Sophia's lies apologized, but their apologies came with a wariness that told me I would never fully recover my reputation. The industry had watched me fight and lose for so long that even vindication couldn't erase the stain of having been destroyed so completely. I tried to start a new company, using the lessons I had learned about algorithms and prediction and the power of data. But investors were hesitant. They praised my resilience, admired my comeback story, but ultimately passed on funding. I was too risky, too controversial, too marked by what had happened. So I did something I never expected to do. I became a teacher. I took a position at a small college, teaching business ethics and startup strategy. I told my students the story of Meridian Analytics, not as a cautionary tale about trusting the wrong person, but as a lesson about the power and danger of systems. We build systems to make our lives easier, I tell them on the first day of each semester. To streamline processes, to predict outcomes, to control chaos. But every system we build can be weaponized. Every tool we create to help us can be turned against us. The question isn't whether to build systems, it's how to build them in ways that prevent them from being used to erase the people they're supposed to serve. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Sophia ever thinks about what she did. If she regrets the choice to destroy me rather than simply buy me out or negotiate my exit. If she understands that her mistake wasn't the fraud itself, but her assumption that making me disappear would be cleaner than letting me exist. I've moved on, built a new life, found a different kind of success. I've even started consulting with companies about ethical algorithm design and preventing the kind of systemic abuse that nearly destroyed me. There's a certain satisfaction in being hired by tech companies who want to avoid becoming the next Meridian Analytics scandal. But here's what I learned, what I need you to understand. The most terrifying thing about what happened to me isn't that it happened. It's how easy it was. Sophia didn't need extraordinary resources or access to classified systems. She just needed patience, planning, and an understanding of how modern identity works. In a world where existence is primarily digital, where identity is verified through systems rather than human recognition, erasing someone is frighteningly simple. You just need to control the right databases, forge the right signatures, create the right paper trail. The systems don't question whether you're telling the truth. They just record what you enter and treat it as fact. I was lucky, if you can call it that. I had documentation that predated Sophia's erasure attempt. I had a paper trail she couldn't fully eliminate. I had enough proof of my existence to eventually fight my way back to being real. But I think about all the people who might not be so lucky. The ones whose entire lives exist only in digital form. The ones who wouldn't know where to even begin proving they existed if someone decided to systematically delete them. We've built a world where identity is data, where existence is verified by algorithm, where being real requires the permission of systems. And we've done it without really considering how vulnerable that makes us to people who understand those systems better than we do. Sophia understood that. She understood it so well that she almost succeeded in making me disappear completely. She would have succeeded if I hadn't spent 15 years studying systems right alongside her. If I hadn't understood the architecture of modern identity well enough to see the gaps in her design. 5 years after everything fell apart, I received an email. It came from an unknown address, sent through enough proxy servers that tracing it would be nearly impossible. The subject line just said, "I'm sorry." The message was short. "Rachel, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. To understand why I did it. I was afraid. Afraid that you would discover that the algorithm wasn't as good as I claimed. Afraid that you would realize I had been exaggerating its capabilities to clients. Afraid that you would want to go public with the truth and destroy everything we built. I thought if I could just remove you from the equation, I could fix the problems without anyone knowing they existed. I thought I could make it seem like you had never been there at all, and then there would be no one to contradict the story I was telling. I was wrong. Not just morally wrong, though I was that too. I was wrong in my understanding of what we built together. The algorithm wasn't sophisticated enough to survive without you. The company wasn't strong enough to survive what I did to hold on to it. I destroyed us both trying to erase you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't understand then. You can't build something real on a foundation of lies. You can't make someone not exist just because their existence is inconvenient. And you can't use systems to control people without eventually having those systems turn on you. I lost 18 months of my life to prison. You lost years of your life to what I did. We both lost the company we built. And for what? Because I was too proud to admit the algorithm had flaws? Because I couldn't handle the idea that our success was built on something less than perfect? I'm working as a software developer now. Small company, nothing special. I help build systems for tracking inventory, nothing that requires the kind of sophisticated prediction we used to do. And every day I'm grateful for the simplicity of it. For work that doesn't require me to pretend to be something I'm not. I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you deleted it without looking. But if you do read it, I want you to know that you won. Not just in the legal sense, though you did that too. You won by refusing to let me make you not exist. By fighting back using truth instead of more lies. By being more ruthless than I was, but in service of something real. I was always the better coder. You were always the better human. Sophia. I sat with that email for a long time, reading it over and over, trying to decide how I felt. Angry? Yes. Vindicated? Certainly. But also something else. Something like sadness for what we both lost when she chose to see me as an obstacle rather than a partner. I never replied. What would I say? That I forgave her? I didn't. That I understood? I did, but understanding doesn't erase harm. That I hoped she learned from it? She clearly had, but her growth came at a cost I paid. Instead, I saved the email in a folder with all the other documentation of what happened. Not as evidence, the legal cases were long settled. But as a reminder. A reminder that systems are only as ethical as the people who build them. That technology doesn't have morality, only applications. That the same tools we use to predict and analyze and optimize can be turned into weapons against the people they're meant to serve. And most importantly, a reminder that existence is not something anyone else gets to decide for you. That being real is not a function of databases and digital records. That identity is something you claim and defend, not something granted by systems that can be manipulated. Sophia tried to make me not exist. She failed not because the systems protected me, they didn't. She failed because I refused to accept the reality she tried to impose. Because I understood that systems could be rebuilt, data could be reconstructed, and truth could be proven even when everyone said it couldn't. I teach my students about this now. About the responsibility that comes with building systems that define identity, predict behavior, and shape reality. About the importance of building in safeguards against the kind of abuse Sophia committed. About the need for transparency and verification and human judgment that can't be automated away. Some of them get it. Some of them will go on to build better systems, more ethical algorithms, structures that protect people instead of enabling their erasure. Others won't. They'll be dazzled by the power of prediction, seduced by the efficiency of automation, convinced that they can use systems to control outcomes without consequences. Those are the ones I worry about. Because for every Sophia Chun who gets caught and faces justice, there are probably dozens who get away with it. Who successfully erase the people who inconvenience them. Who rebuild reality in their image and never face consequences. I was lucky. I had the skills to fight back, the stubbornness to keep fighting when any reasonable person would have given up, and just enough documentation to eventually prove I existed. But I think about all the people who aren't lucky. Who don't have those skills or that stubbornness or that documentation. Who get erased and stay erased because no one believes them, or no one cares, or because the systems say they're wrong and systems don't lie. Those are the real victims of our algorithmic age. The ones who disappear and never come back. The ones we never even know are missing because the systems tell us they were never there at all. I existed. I fought back. I won, though what I won looked nothing like what I lost. But I'll never forget what it felt like to slowly disappear, to watch my existence being deleted one system at a time, to have the world tell me I was wrong about who I was. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that when someone builds the next algorithm, the next system, the next tool for predicting and controlling and optimizing human behavior, they understand the weight of what they're creating. Because in the end, that's all we are. Data points in systems we didn't design, entries in databases we can't control, predictions in algorithms we don't understand. Until we decide we're something more. Until we refuse to let the systems define us. Until we fight back. I disappeared for 18 months. But I came back. And I'm never letting anyone make me not exist again.
If you like this story, do subscribe and like and do comment to let us know what type of stories you like to hear so that we can make up those. You can also share your own stories if you want them get uploaded along with your pick.